Ben and Ellie are on tomorrow evening. I am Ethan, host of Ethan's AI Updates. Let's get started. Trump on trade, the auto industry, and the facts. In 2017, we all remember Trump's tariffs on lumber, steel, and aluminum, and billions in Chinese goods. He even implemented tariffs on our Canadian neighbors, increasing the cost to build a home by more than a third. The handful of companies that control lumber prices were raking it in, stocks soared, and tipped-off investors were laughing all the way to the bank. Steel, aluminum, and goods tariffs also increased the cost of vehicles significantly. Tariffs on steel and aluminum hurt most American manufacturers and had a net jobs loss, not a jobs gain. Canada, China, and other nations slapped retaliatory tariffs on the United States, which Biden renegotiated, removing some and putting quotas on others that remediate the effects of Trump's haphazard tariffs. Moreover, Biden is creating good-paying American jobs through chip manufacturing investments in America, expanding U.S. manufacturing of solar panel parts, power grid infrastructure such as transformers, heat pumps, building insulation and other equipment, and retooling auto plants for the manufacturing of EV vehicles. In addition, at the end of 2016, the Canada Trade Pact expired. When Trump got into office, he failed to negotiate a new trade agreement with them. Lumber prices increased by a third throughout the nation, and even more in California and in growing cities. Later in 2021, monopoly lumber corporations increased lumber prices even more due to a demand surge. Trump's trade war with China increased the prices Americans pay for goods, while at the same time making manufacturing here less competitive by increasing cost of inputs, parts, components, and materials used to build stuff. Because Trump's trade war was also with Canada and other countries. Those countries imposed their own tariffs and other measures, thereby decreasing the demand and export of American manufactured goods and farm products like corn, cotton, and soy. The rest of the world did not impose such tariffs, which made their manufacturing more competitive than ours. Trade shifted, and other countries began replacing American goods with others made or grown in competing countries, decreasing our exports all over the world. Years later, after Trump imposed tariffs from 10 to 25%, Trump signed a Phase 1 agreement with China. China reneged on a massive scale, taking then-President Trump on a ride of up yours. In addition, when the 2016 Canada Trade Pact expired, Trump failed a new trade agreement, just like he failed with China. To make matters worse for Americans, monopoly corporations took this opportunity to raise prices even more, fleecing the American public. Then COVID-19 hit and corporations continued to hike prices, blaming supply chain for home costs rising and food prices soaring, even though the United States produces most of our beef, milk, pork, chicken, eggs, grain, animal feed, alfalfa, vegetables, fruits, and nuts. Corporate profits increased, executive pay increased, and shareholder value increased, and the profits of big banks and world investors increased. I hate to say this, but I knew that extremely high tariffs on foreign cars should have been implemented in the 80s in an effort to assist the Big Three and save American jobs then and in the future. Tariffs on furniture, mattresses, appliances, and electronics should have been implemented as well. If China wants to manufacture clothing, cardboard boxes, balloons, and plastic trinkets, so be it. But the high-dollar products should have been protected and manufactured here. But in the 80s, Reagan and Congress would have none of that. But at this point, economic nationalism is not the answer. There are only a few 100 million people in the United States, but over 8 billion in the world. Do you really think that we can put a big enough dent in China's exports? Hell no, we can't. China exports to the world. So we should have not allowed a trade deficit to begin with, nor allowed high-end products like appliances that provided good-paying jobs with benefits to be cheaply made in another country and imported here to the United States. However, we manufacture tons and tons of chemicals, fertilizers, and pharmaceuticals here in the United States, and do not require companies to safely dispose of the waste. Another consideration is the high environmental cost of shipping goods across the world, rather than building them in the purchasing country. That is so crazy. However, a positive effect regarding trade is that it decreases the risk of war. In addition, people that tout cheaper products don't understand that a cheap price does not matter if American workers cannot afford to buy them, or have to buy the inferior product over and over again. If paid the wage we should be paid, a higher-priced, quality product that was made in America would be enthusiastically purchased. Not only that, so-called experts do not take into account the real costs of cheap products, like pollution produced by shipping, trash disposal of cheap, disposable products dumped everywhere across the globe, higher unemployment, a lower GDP, and forcing working Americans to rely on food stamps, Medicaid, and the WIC program, putting a larger burden on our government's programs and us as taxpayers. By the way, appliances, television sets, and stereos once lasted for 30 years, sometimes more. Wooden furniture lasted for lifetimes, and sofas and recliners for a decade or two or more. Cars needed less maintenance, and the engines and transmissions remained in tip-top condition for decades. Now cheaply made, imported appliances are disposable, like our electronics, furniture, and automobiles. Decades ago, politicians could have regulated big corporations and made it unprofitable for companies to go to China or other countries by imposing both incentives not to manufacture in foreign countries and implement a fiscal punishment like a high tax rate for companies that chose to manufacture elsewhere, like China, India, or Mexico. Moreover, lawmakers could have disallowed American corporations from moving their headquarters to tax haven countries to avoid paying American corporate taxes. Our trade agreement is not so forthcoming either. For example, trade that Trump kept in place when he bragged about renegotiating NAFTA uses terminology like manufactured in North America, which includes the United States, Canada, and Mexico. What Trump's USMCA changed for duty-free auto trade exemption with Mexico was to only raise the percentage of an automobile's parts by several percentage points more than that of the already in place NAFTA to qualify for tariff-free treatment. My point is that automobiles, appliances, electronics, mattresses, furniture, and more will be manufactured south of the border, and is what has been happening for 3 decades now. Corporations will continue to produce products in Mexico and create jobs for the Mexican population, not ours, but charge Americans sky-high prices for automobiles and other goods. I hope the United Auto Workers thoroughly addressed the trade agreement in their recent negotiations. Ignoring the soundbites, Trump's USMCA is basically the same as NAFTA. Auto manufacturing flourishes in Mexico, with not only American-branded cars and trucks, big rigs and motorcycles, but also German, Japanese, Swiss, and Chinese-branded automakers. Another thing, without defining trade boundaries, economically, North America is considered by many to stretch to the Panama Canal, and the Free Trade Agreement, CAFTA, is already in place. In the future, this could play a negative role in trade and for the American worker. What do you think? I want you to digest and think about what I have revealed. Comment below how trade has affected your life. If you like my show, check out Ethan's AI updates at Scrood, spelled Scrood. Thanks.